Welcome to the RotoWire Prospect Podcast, brought to you by WinBet. I am your host, James Anderson, and this week I'm very happy to be joined by Chris Welsh, who I've done dozens of podcasts with over the years, and who is fortunate enough to be out in Arizona. So, who better to bring on to talk about prospects than a guy who's been out on the backfields, getting eyes on them all spring? Chris, how you doing?
What's up, buddy? Dozens. I don't know. I mean, I'd say close. I feel like it's close to like 100. It's probably not, but a lot of podcasts. Prospect One had you on ITL. I've done your shows. We have if we go more than 2 months without a show, there might be like a check-in we usually have. We're like, hey, what's up, buddy? Like both of us, we're like checking in with each other to make sure that we're good. But yeah, it's good to be on, good to talk prospects. And I got to tell you, a little sad, not just a little congested from being out so much, and the allergies are horrible in Arizona, but I'm like a tiny bit sad because today, as we're recording, represented the end of all of the minor league spring training that was going on out here. It's awesome that minor league season is going to, start up, but I've had the freedom on a given day being able to like cruise out and see 3 different teams on their backfields and see, double A here and single A here, and here's the Dodgers and here's the Rangers, and getting to see these guys in person kind of on a whim. You could almost cover the entire Cactus League in a week of minor league prospects, and that's gone. So like I'm a little lonely. It's kind of like your kids growing up and leaving the house, and I'm like empty nester. So I'm just like, okay, want to talk about prospects? Okay, that's cool. I got nothing else to do.
Yeah, Arizona's the absolute best for watching a ton of baseball with minimal effort. I mean, you could just get everywhere, like you said, in less than an hour. So what I wanted to do today is I want to start off by getting 3 prospects who surprised you in a positive way, and 1 prospect who maybe surprised you a little bit in a negative way. And then I want to talk about all these big leaguers who broke camp with their teams. I think it's just so fun and so cool that it actually happened with a bunch of these guys. So it's just going to be a heck of an opening day. But let's start on the backfields, since that's where you are spending a ton of your time, or we're spending a ton of your time. Give me 1 prospect who, after you saw him, kind of positively impressed you this spring.
Now, there's a lot of different ways to go with this. I've talked about some of these different guys. A couple of the ones I just want to mention is big name. I might have a couple big names. I got 1 smaller name. We could obviously go in a couple other directions of guys I've talked about that might have been less known to everybody else. But the first one's just a big name guy. And I thought it was really important because I got to see everything up front, and was Jack Leiter. So, might not 100% qualify for maybe what you were looking for when you say, hey, who's a guy that positively affected? Well, that was Leiter. I mean, that top end of starting pitchers is kind of difficult to navigate. I think it's Grayson Rodriguez. You could throw Shane Baz in there. And then there's this big, huge clump of guys. There's the Myers. There's the Kirbys. There's the Cavallis. Leiter sits somewhere in that general area for people. But the thing he doesn't have comparative to the rest of these guys is any professional track record for us to go off of. He didn't pitch last year after being drafted. He's stuck around at Vanderbilt. He came over here for a tiny bit. He did some instructs, but he didn't do anything. So when the CBA got agreed upon, the very first thing that happened is a lot of the facilities were not open, where the Rangers and Royals not only opened up their facilities, but they said in honor of this, they were going to run a scrimmage game. And that scrimmage game featured the Rangers putting out Jack Leiter and the Royals putting out Bobby Witt. And I had tweeted about it, got a lot of traction on the Bobby Witt front, because I think I was one of the first to tweet out and show, hey, Bobby Witt's at third base. There's nothing else that's going on. I think we all kind of presumed it, but he was starting at third base. But in that game, Leiter threw, and I happened to sit right behind home plate. I have an angle. There's one thing I'm known for. It's my angle of video that I go, and James has seen me do it, and anybody that's been around me see, I go up, I sit, there's netting, and I get the camera right in between the netting, so I get this really cool view, and it's kind of become my view. I couldn't get that on this one, but I just so happened to be sitting behind home plate in front of the radar gun they put out there. So I was like, I got to do this more often. This is great, because every pitch I got to see the velocity, and I was calling them on some video I had. Now, the idea of the positive impression here is that Jack Leiter is obviously a top pitching prospect, but he sat somewhere in that clump. And I have seen Kirby pitch in person. I have not seen Meyer and Cavalli in person, but I've seen a lot of these other guys, and I have reference points to them, Nick Lodola's, Hunter Green's. And Leiter was immensely impressive in his first professional debut. He dominated every single one of the hitters except Bobby Witt. Vinny Pasquantino was in that lineup. Vinny couldn't do anything against him. All the other guys, they didn't have a whole bunch. I think they might have had like Peyton Wilson and a few others, not big names. Bobby Witt obviously had his number. Bobby Witt went 3 for 3 in the game. I didn't get crazy good contact. He had one good single that went to left field. But what was impressive in all that missed time was how locked in Leiter was. He was sitting 90, I want to say 95, 96 the whole time. He touched 98. He was throwing off his secondaries. His slider was disgusting. He had multiple strikeouts. He had a little bit of a command issue as he got further in. He hit a guy on the shoulder. But what you could see was a guy that was ready and commanding with multiple pitches. And then, what was it, like a week ago? We got the aggressive assignment of Double-A. And I think that shows you how far along he is. And I know everybody, every time you talk about these guys, are like, oh, hey, when's it coming up? Is he going to be up this year? Like, no, he's not going to be up this year. But they gave him a Double-A assignment. And this is a guy that had 3+ pitches. He had a little bit of wonkiness with command, but he was one of those dominant pitchers in college. So, you know, this isn't an out of absolutely nowhere guy that positively improved, but this is a guy that I got to see out there look like a frontline starter. The only guy he struggled against just made the major leagues and might be a 2020 guy. And I felt personally like Leiter maybe separated himself from the bottom of that pitching clump, and he does belong. And I don't think a lot of people have him there. I do think he belongs in that Meyer, Cavalli, Kirby territory. And if you want to think of like high-end future bets, maybe above, because I really think this is not a relief risk. This is a frontline type of starter with a guy who had very little working with his organization, was topping out at 98 in his first, spring game. So I felt really, really good. So hopefully that's kind of what you were looking for, James, in that one, because I thought he beat expectations with the pitches that we saw in person. And everybody doesn't have a point of reference at this point. It's going to be like Friday, Saturday, your guys are going to get to see him on television. And I think you're going to see like Vanderbilt versions of Jack Leiter back out there in Double-A.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think people would love to hear that, especially since we didn't get to see him last year. My pitching ranks are probably more jumbled than you're even making it out to be. I don't necessarily follow that same consensus, but
and there's more guys, by the way. I want to add in, like, I just kind of kept throwing out the same names of guys, but you throw more in. There's Lodolo, there's Green, there's Uri Perez's, there's Detmers, there's Espina. I mean, it's this giant clump of guys. I didn't mean to make it about 4 guys. I mean, in my eyes, it might be, I don't know, 10 to 12 guys that are not, even if the rank was 40 spots, in my mind, they're almost in the same tier. The ranks are kind of subjective in numbers, and people get really focused on numbers. But do you agree? Is it like there's like after maybe the top 1 or 2, or maybe even just throw them in, it's a big clump of 10 to 12 pitchers that look relatively, quote, elite?
I mean, I think it's more. I mean,
it's even more.
I've got 28 pitchers in my top 100 for the update that went up on Monday, and they're all just awesome. They're all like, I could make a strong case for any of those guys.
Can I ask you something real quick?
Sure.
Who is 28?
Edward Cabrera.
Okay. And who is 1?
Shane Baz.
Okay. So how far of a different, what is your separator? Those are 2 fantastic names, by the way. Like, what is the biggest separator between Edward Cabrera and Shane Baz in your mind, and how far is it separated? That makes sense how I'm saying that? Like, not numerically. I don't care about numerically, but like from the prospect standpoint of like, there's all these guys in between them, and it's a big clump, and you can make arguments like, how far off is the argument of Edward to Shane
yeah,
Baz?
I mean, this is probably an argument for not you should never, I don't think you should. So like everything you said about Jack Leiter, I would not trade for Jack Leiter right now. I don't think you should ever be trading for these guys.
It's such a good,
when people are high on them. Like, I think you've missed your window on a pitching prospect once people agree that they're really good. And part of why you should never do that is, like, I wouldn't be surprised if 2 years from now, Edward Cabrera was more valuable in fantasy than Shane Baz, even though I've got him like 75 spots apart on my rankings. It's
Look at
just,
Joe Ryan. Look at Joe Ryan
yeah,
was not a top 100 prospect forever, and he's the opening day starter for the Twins right now, to your point.
yeah. I mean, I'm pushing guys up based on proximity as much as ever. I've
I've
got
done more of
like
that as
you know,
well.
people are mad about me not having Uri Perez or Daniel Espino in my top 10. It's just all about how much things can go wrong in the next year or so before those guys debut. But if you want to put those guys up top, like, they're talented enough to justify that.
To your point with those guys as well, I just want to point out is, like, this is the world's worst time to trade for Uri Perez. Like, what you said, I know you were doing it blanket. That's to all. That is to Uri Perez specifically. This is the worst time to trade for him. He will cost you everything. Same with Daniel Espino. I just did a bold prediction show that you were on Prospect One, and I think it was Jeff Ponce that had Daniel Espino like number one pitching, like top 10 overall or something like that. Like, those two, they're far away. Maybe people are getting mad at you, but it's also the absolute worst time of worst times to trade for those guys as far as valuations. And I've done a kind of the same thing as you. It's like I've moved up a whole lot. I don't have I think I maybe have 2 or 1 sub 20-year-old pitcher and sub 22-year-old in my top 100. Maybe 3 or 4 total.
The only teenager I have in my top 100 is Uri Perez on the pitching side.
No Job, no,
No,
I don't think Abel is a
no,
teenager.
those
No, he's not.
guys. No, I honestly didn't even consider Job or Abel for the top 100 because of how far I think they are away. But like, if you just wanted to lay out the pitches and say, well, he's got this many plus pitches or projects for this many plus pitches, that's just not how I rank pitching prospects anymore. Like, yeah, I
Yeah.
really try to factor in how much risk there is with each guy. But like Leiter, even though we haven't seen him pitch, just like we haven't seen Job pitch, Leiter could be up next year. So he's comfortably inside my top 100, but he's not in my top 75 yet. Just
Yeah, and
because,
I think the big thing is he will be. As soon as you
yeah,
see, 'cause he
I
checks.
think that's something that people should sort of expect to happen.
Yeah.
But
And that
then,
was my point of bringing him up too, is like, you're bringing up the best point here that makes me feel better about talking about him. Because sometimes I think you struggle with this, I struggle with this as people that talk about prospects. Like, sometimes everybody wants us to talk about all the guys. I had somebody hit me up like, hey, in your bold predictions, you didn't even talk about Corbin Carroll, or in your live looks, you didn't even talk about Corbin Carroll in someone you saw. And it's like, yeah, you're right. I guess I just always talk about him. And I assume, so you have this struggle of like, do you talk about the top guys, or is everybody only ever want guys that no one's thinking of and the next big guy? But to your point, you don't have him in the top 75. He wasn't being drafted usually, unless it was a points league, in the top 6, let's say, in first year player drafts. And it's because there's not a lot of stuff going on. There's not a lot of buzz. He wasn't playing in games. He wasn't pitching a whole bunch. It was very behind the scenes. And my point to all of that is I think he checks a lot of boxes for you. He's going to be closer. He got an aggressive assignment. He will be closer. He's got 3-ish plus pitches, if not, at worst 2. He's got an arsenal to work with. He's got bloodlines, and he's got pretty good command. He can get wonky in like a Mckenzie Gore-ish type of way sometimes, but I think he's more fluid about it. And he's a guy that, based off of what I saw, if you had him in the lower part of the 100s, I think he is going to jump into the upper tier, whomever fits that group. Maybe Meyer and Kirby, whoever don't fit that top 5, 6, 7 overall SPs in your mind. But whoever is in that group, I think that's where Leiter will sit. I think he will firmly, by June 1st. I think for you, he will be inside your top 50, knowing you how I do.
it's quite possible.
Or outside the top 150. You know what? Sometimes I don't know. He'll either be inside the top 150 or he'll be off the list. I'm not really 100% sure.
Okay, who's the number 2 guy that impressed you?
Okay, the number 2 guy, it's one more big name. And I apologize. I'm going down this road a little bit. And the third one people are going to know as well. But I did bounce back and forth with I'm going to give you a choice. I'm going to give you a choice on this. Dustin Harris or Christian Hernandez? Who do you want to talk about?
Let's do Christian Hernandez, because you and everyone, if you like this podcast, you should 100% be listening to the Prospect One podcast. And Welsh, on the podcast I was on that got released earlier this week, talked about Dustin Harris for a good 5 minutes there. So people can go check that pod out if they want to hear about Dustin Harris. But let's talk about Christian Hernandez.
Okay, and I had him on the list, and I deleted him in favor of Christian Hernandez. Talk about Christian Robinson as well, because I really love the stuff we saw with Dustin Harris. But Christian Hernandez has been a really fascinating case. So this is another guy that he has all the buzz in the world, and he has no American stateside track record. He played in the Dominican Summer League last year, where he had 285, 5 homers, 21 stolen bases, looked pretty good. But most cites by people, kind of the skinny kid. I think sometimes Cubs prospects have the hype that become then underwhelming. I think people are kind of ready for that. I think, Pete Crow Armstrong, Ed Howard is a prime example of that, where people kind of go in and out. I think a lot don't know what to make of Preciado or Alcantara, and Christian Hernandez has all of the buzz. I've been hyper aggressive on him, but I got to catch a game. They were running their minor league spring training, and it was nice because the Giants came over, and it was actually a chance to see, I think Ryan Reckley, the top international prospect for the Giants, was out there, and Christian Hernandez was there. And Reckley got just decimated, by the way. Just, stateside stuff. All these guys were really getting taken advantage of. What stood out, though, were a couple things on how Christian Hernandez has been presenting himself and the guys he's been working with. He had been working in all of the workouts pretty exclusively with like the Alcantaras and the Preciados, which I think is a really good thing. The standout BP it takes notice. You immediately take notice, but also the body and the presentation of how he's been putting himself up at bat. So one of the at-bats I have, he did strike out, but it was striking out. And he was very visual. So something that stood out to me, especially with young guys, is you see like hyper aggression. These guys will come up, swing through their shoes, especially if they've got like a really pretty swing, or if they've got really good bat speed. Sometimes they're going to just like, they're going to work on that. They're going to sit off speed because that's where they struggle. And they're like, well, I'll catch back up. Or Hernandez did something that I thought was really interesting in the at-bats that I saw, where he seemed hyper plate appearance oriented or plate discipline oriented, which I thought was nice. One of the first pitches that came in kind of high on the corner. He didn't swing on it, and he was shaking his head. He was like, nope. Like, he knew exactly what the zone was. And he took a couple good hacks that he didn't get quite control of, but man, you could see the wrist just turn on it. He exploded on the ball. There wasn't a whole lot of like, another thing you'll notice with guys, Julio Rodriguez is a prime example. Julio Rodriguez used to be like, I'm doing a visual here. He used to be like really like bat on his shoulder, kind of behind. And if you've noticed as he's progressed, and a lot of guys do, the bat kind of starts to come more forward, and it doesn't go so far back on their shoulder or behind their head. And it just kind of goes forward. And you notice a lot of guys that have success when they make that change. Joe Adele, I think, has been another example of that. When you just kind of bring it around your shoulder, don't bring it too far back, there's less movement and less reactionary time for them that they can explode on the ball. And that's what smart, at least from my eye, I'm not a professional scout or anything, but these guys that are able to explode on the ball, when they don't have the bat so far back, they can just explode and turn the wrist. That's a good thing. I hardly see that with Christian Hernandez. And then in the at bat at the end, he struck out and he was pissed, and he immediately looked and he was shaking his head. He's like, no way. And that it was a really small thing in my eyes, but for a young guy without stateside experience to already start showing off the plate discipline, I thought was impressive. He explodes on the ball. He's got quick hands. I thought his body looked more advanced than you would think. They list him at 6'2", 175, and it's pretty chiseled, and it doesn't feel skinny. And I think we're going to see a big season from him. He's got a lot of high expectations, and it's hard, again, for me to pick a guy that's like, hey, who's a guy that, really impressed you in a positive way. It didn't change where I upped his rank, but I thought it gave me validation on I'm incredibly high. And in a world where proximity, and I've stated this a lot over the last 6 months, like, I think proximity we're going to have an era of proximity with prospects over the next couple of years where, in the past, Julio Rodriguez and Wander Franco's, they got away with a whole lot of stuff, and we were right. But I think there's going to be a lot of proximity based stuff where people are going to say, yeah, this is cool. I really like these young guys, but I need guys now. And I'm looking for production now. So as much as Christian Robinson, I keep seeing Christian Robinson, as much as Christian Hernandez is super fun, I would rather have Miguel Vargas, that is going to be a really good bat and is, going to have 2 or 3 years on him. Or, I would rather have a Jeremy Pena, which that might be a legitimate fun debate of Jeremy Pena, who has production now, versus Christian Hernandez. So proximity is going to, I think, lower the value of younger guys. I've got him incredibly high, incredibly high, because I think by next year he could be a top 10 overall prospect. And some of the stuff I saw early on in camps really impressed me, how he carries himself, how stateside he's been. He's been here since Instructs. And I think he's going to play complex is my assumption. He's going to be extended. I think he's going to destroy complex ball, and then he'll hit low A later this year. And next year we'll be looking at him hitting high A and really moving through. And I think he'll be pretty unanimously the top guy with the Cubs. Once Brandon Davis comes off the list, we won't really be discussing, a tier. It'll just be Christian Hernandez. So the plate discipline stuff really stands out to me. And even though it was small sample sizes and I don't have some big homer to go with, Hernandez stood out, man. And I don't know how you feel about him with proximity, because he's a tough one. He is a decent ways away, but the CBA just showed us, 20 and 21-year-old guys being able to make the majors.
He is one of 3 18-year-olds in my top 50.
Only 3. Oh, that's I wonder how many 18-year-olds I have. That's a good question.
I've got him at 46. The other one is Khalil Watson and Yuri Perez, who we just talked about.
I have all 3 of those. I also have Preciado, and I do have Roderick Arias. So those are my only guys. I tend to be a little bit more aggressive on the future plays of international guys. So I think I've got 5 18-year-olds.
So, like, to your point, I got not only did I get we're doing this Highlander startup draft, and you're not in the league, but like I'm kind of doing a play for next year strategy, and proximity was just getting so pushed up in this draft. I was able to get Ellie De La Cruz, Christian Hernandez, Kevin Alcantara. Just kind of people just didn't want to wait on those guys. And to me, it's I think it's like proximity is extremely important, but then there's going to be a half dozen to a dozen guys every year where you can kind of see that meteoric ceiling, and
pinpointing those guys is like the important thing. It's actually a cool thing that you can do. I've always been, we spent so many years back in the day, if people have been following for a while, before the Highlander, there was the RotoWire Invitational, which we played in, and we called it the Tom Trudeau strategy of where, he went out and he completely punted the first year and subsequently punted the second year and the third year. I didn't like the strategy at the time from a consumer standpoint, because the thing I wanted to point out, as cool as it was, and he nailed on guys, as cool as it was, do I want to be the person that goes out there and suggests to people, hey, why don't you eat that money that you're paying in your league for 2 or 3 years? Just eat it, throw away, burn it, as a matter of fact. I think that's really tough to do. But there's a place for it, and people want to do it, and you have a freedom. And so when you punt that first year, you have a free. I just had somebody ask me, they have a dynasty coming up on Wednesday, and they had said, hey, would it be crazy on a 12-man on the turn to go Witt and Julio? And I was like, no, it's not crazy. I mean, I have them inside the top 20, and it's not quite punty, but maybe it becomes a little bit. And then, if you get those type of guys, it gives you the freedom to take more proximity prospects, and then a little bit later, exactly what you're saying and what you are taking advantage of, when people are like, okay, I'm winning now, and I need these guys that are going to come up really soon. Give me JJ Bleday. You can go out and you could take advantage you're essentially buying an extra year of the elite, of the guys with the elite potential, of the Ellies, of I bet Yuri Perez got pushed up, but even the rotor, you might not be as big on the international class. And I think there's a bigger question with it, but the Roderick Arias and stuff like that, like where no one would even consider them. You can do it when this first year just doesn't even matter. Like, who cares about this first year? So I can like the strategy, except in a big, like in that instance, the 20-man league where you punt, you're not punting for 1 year. You're punting for probably 3 years at best, until it gets right. And I think that's tough to tell our listeners when you're paying money and stuff like that. That's a whole nother thing.
Right. I mean, if you know a dynasty league is going to last for 10 or 15 years, the Trudeau strategy is a brilliant strategy, but he never got to capitalize on that in the RotoWire Dynasty
because exactly what you said. It
right.
folded. The league
Right.
didn't last. It lasted, I think, 3 years, and literally when it was time, the league was gone. And he had, his Acuñas and Vladimir Guerreros, and that didn't get to work out. So that was literally a case study of 3 years to prove the point of where I was going, and exactly what you're saying is, as fun as it can be, burning multiple years of money where a league can end is why most of us are like, hey, let's play for win now for the most part. But you're doing a unique, I'd love to see the team. I don't think I've seen the team. You can do I can't do it this year, but I'm going to kill it next year strategy. And you can build it around, most likely, and you tell me if I'm wrong, in that strategy, in my mind, I'm building it around those hitters. I'm building around hitters that are 1 year away. And then I'm probably taking middle line pitching and stuff like that, because I feel like pitchers take longer to mature. So, I mean, not saying I wouldn't take Ludolos and Greens and stuff like that, but I feel like it's like where a hitter can come up and maybe take a year to really move, like Odell. I feel like pitching usually takes 2 or 3 years, unless your name is Trevor Rogers.
Yeah, no, it's and I'll actually I'll be writing about that draft later today here for the site. But
excited to read it.
Gonna head to a quick message from our sponsors, but when we come back, Welsh will give us his third hitter from the backfields who impressed him this spring. WynnBET is now the exclusive sponsor for RotoWire's fantasy podcasts. WynnBET brings you all the latest action with a user-friendly interface, moneyline bets, boosted parlays, over-unders, round robins, live betting, and so much more at your fingertips. Want a break from sports betting? Head into WynnBET's digital casino and take a spin on roulette, double down in blackjack, slam the slots, or try your hand at baccarat. WynnBET is currently available in 9 states: Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Louisiana, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Tennessee, and Virginia, while rapidly expanding. At WynnBET, the possibilities are limitless. Register for WynnBET today, make a qualifying deposit, and wager to receive $200 in free bets. Promotion may vary by state. Download WynnBET now. That's WYNNBET. WynnBET, the exclusive partner for RotoWire's fantasy podcasts. All right, Welsh, we're back, and let's hear the third guy who impressed you in Arizona.
It's not going to be like a big surprise, but I think it's important to talk about, and I'd like to talk about with you. And I think there's other guys that could have made this list, and I gave hard thought to. Victor Acosta with the Padres is one of those guys I've chatted about. And again, there's a handful of others, from Evan Carter's to Everson Ortega with the Giants, have all had some impression. But the number one guy that was the most impressive to me, and I just don't think you and I have talked about him, is Davison De Los Santos. And I'm a little behind the 8 ball, because I know, and they've, when someone likes a prospect nowadays, James, they don't do it on podcasts. Is they tweet about it, they quote tweet their tweet that they tweeted about it, and they let you know about that they loved a prospect. So people will tell you that they love De Los Santos before anybody, and that's totally okay. And like many guys as of recent that have really popped, I don't like being like this sometimes, but there are instances where I look at these guys and I'm like, okay, I see the surface, I see the stuff, but like I need to visually be in person to really buy into some of the hype that some people get. And to credit, I think there's some guys that have really been thrown out there. Davison De Los Santos, not one guy made me go, whoa, more than him during the spring. He was the biggest whoa moment I had. And I tweeted about it. Happened on the backfields, where I have this really cool picture. It was another moment where I saw Alec Thomas for the first time in spring, and I was like, holy crap, what was he doing in the offseason? He looks huge. And I'm not even sure if the, game at bats and stuff really show how big he looks in person, especially if you have a comparison. But there's this photo I have. It's De Los Santos, Carroll, and Thomas doing BP. And De Los Santos is up in the second round of BP. And he just crushes this ball, and it hits a light pole. That's behind, it's like a home run. It's like halfway up the light pole, and it dings. In the video, you hear a coach yell something, and everyone's like, holy crap. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And he keeps doing it. And again, I apologize for kind of retreading some stuff I've talked about, but I then went and started asking pitchers. I was asking Ryan Nelson was one of and he's a fantastic prospect. And Liam Norris, we both chatted about, him, and they both just oohed and awed about De Los Santos. They were just like, this guy, I'm telling you, this guy is crazy. He doesn't have a whole lot of flaws. And Liam Norris told me he does this every day. Every day he's hitting just massive mammoth homers more than anybody else. Corbin Carroll's not a big power guy. He's a contact guy. He's always impressive. Alec Thomas, little combo of both. Christian Robinson's out there, but nobody has power like him. And I don't think the body is out of control. And I think a lot of people were concerned about that. It's pretty fit. I've even exchanged some stuff with him on Instagram. And, for the age and for the raw power and the contact he's making, I don't know, man. Like, this is one, it pisses me off, James. Like, I hate that everybody else, like the other people, those are smart guys that were on it so hard, but this is one that I've jumped on in a huge, huge degree. He's the most impressive, probably the most impressive of impact that have been made on the backfields. Like I said, I thought Acosta was really good. Dustin Harris, maybe a little bit more impactful, but Davison really, really looks like an absolute dude. And I think he could hit 20 plus homers this year in a full season of minor leagues. And I know that might not sound crazy, but we don't see like that to an immense amount, but it might be 2025. He's got light tower power. He also got to play in spring training games. I love Davison De Los Santos, and I wouldn't be shocked if he's a top 50 overall prospect come the end of the year. And it's not just homerism of a Diamondback, because again, they'll all tell you, everybody will tell you, James, who loved Davison De Los Santos before anybody else. So I'm not the only one.
Are they gonna keep letting you back at that facility out in Arizona?
I one day I put some glasses on, someday I put a hat on. I'll maybe change my shirt. No, you know what? The guys are really cool there too. Like I've like De Los Santos, like we were fist pounds and stuff like that because he knows I'm rooting for him. The not fun thing is when you're not on a guy and they pay attention. Not all these guys pay attention, but the younger guys you catch, like when I put out the video of De Los Santos, he immediately got into my DMs and thanked me. And I was like, don't thank me, dude. Like this is incredible stuff. But I still don't know. I seriously doubt it, James, that anybody really, there's a handful of guys that do know me and remember me. Like I've been around Julio. I don't think Julio remembers me, and I've interviewed him on field before. Kelnick has absolutely no idea who I am. And I did a 10-minute interview. Well, he doesn't remember because he didn't look at me at all when we did the interview, weirdly. But like, most of the guys, even though I'll like continuously come back there, unless I'm there a lot, they don't. The Rangers guys, they do remember me. I got prospects there that know exactly who I am. Some of the Diamondbacks guys do, but I just got to make sure I'm not too creepy in the bushes with binoculars or anything, trying to figure out what these guys are doing.
Yeah, the worse the prospect is, the more likely they are to acknowledge that they remember you, I'm sure, which is why Eric Pena and you are such tight buddies.
Yeah. Me and Eric are very, very good, and I'm hoping he pops so I can keep talking nice.
All right, who's the and De Los Santos, by the way, I moved up long or quite a ways on my last update, but I'm sure I'm still lower than everyone else on him. And
it's also proximity? Yeah, that's what I meant. I wanted to kind of ask you, like, when you compare him against proximity guys, or even just like okay, let me ask you this one. De Los Santos, break me down De Los Santos versus Edbert in your mind, because we've kind of gone back and forth. You were big Edbert, you kind of cooled down a little bit on Edbert. I think they're close to the same age, and they might be close to the same level. They're different positions, of course, but like, how far different do you think? And I'm doing this completely on the spot for you. How far off do you think like Edbert and De Los Santos is in your mind?
They're in like the exact same tier. Like I've got a bunch of guys. Like I've got like Dominguez, Preciado, Blaze Jordan, Edbert, Acosta, Christian Santana, like all in that same tier with De Los Santos. So I mean, maybe I should have even had him higher. I've got him outside my top 100. And
wait,
I think
did you say Jason? Did you say Dominguez?
Yeah.
Is he outside your top 100?
He's 96.
Okay. Oh yeah, you're hating. I mean, I think you and I probably have De Los Santos about the same area. That's always the biggest story. Like, is he 120s or something?
116.
Okay. I mean, you got him like just a couple numerical spots ahead of where I have him. I've got him right in that. I have him like 126, I think. So we've got him like right in the same general range. But that threw me off when you said Preciado and Dominguez. I was like, oh man, you got him high, but you moved Preciado down and Dominguez.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of if you think about it, like sort of this group of guys, like I brought like De Los Santos and some other guys up to sort of meet these other guys.
Yeah.
And it's sort of a collection of super high ceiling guys that they're one really good 2-month run in full season ball away from rocketing up the list. But I think they're also all kind of a couple really rough months against low A pitching from falling down the list. And so they're kind of in that holding zone between like 95 and 125 for me.
I think you and I have said this a couple times, but I was just having this conversation with a friend yesterday about how, the tier, because people get very worked up about like ranks, like you even mentioned it before. You're like, people getting all pissed off that you don't have like Yuri Perez wherever they want him to be or whatever it is. People get very worked up, but I don't think they realize, at least in like my mind, and I'm kind of projecting this on you a little bit, that like who I have at 50 and who I have at 150, I know that seems like the world. It's not that much. Like, to your point, like guys I have, like, okay, I have like someone I just talked about, one of my biggest breakout prospects, I think this year, Rubio Angeles, or if I'm saying his name correct, who just got traded to the A's. Like, he's one, I'm like, hey, I love this guy, blah, blah, blah. But he's like one good month or two run away from jumping up into the top 50. At the same time, though, a Jason Dominguez is one bad 6-week run from falling for me outside the top 100. I have him quite a bit higher than you. Because the tiers are so similar, whatever you want to say, I'm just randomly throwing out 50 to 150 in my ranks. Those guys interchangeably by how they produce, they could flip. You could have them flip. I think the tiers are very close to each other. And even when you get into the 160s and stuff like that, that I'm just adding to your point, that people get very worked up about this guy being 60 and this guy being 130. They might not be that far off, to be honest with you. And it's just some positive or negative reinforcement away from having a massive change. It's not necessarily one for one, but guys I have right outside my top 100, I think there's some huge upside guys. Some of the international guys like Christian Vaquero and Ricardo Cabrera, who were just J15 guys, Carlos Colmenares, who's kind of cooled off. Those guys are just a little bit of a good run away from popping up, though they're not going to play for a little bit. Or some of the draft guys that we just recently had, whether it's Josh Baez or even Victor Acosta. It's just small little things can make them have really, really big moves. So even though I kind of had an audible like, oh, you got Dominguez at 96, doesn't mean you hate him. And he's probably one good month away from, maybe reconfirming you back. Like what would one good Dominguez month, let's say he hits 300, hits a couple bombs, steals a couple bases in April, what do you think? I know you can't give an exact science, but don't you think you would probably pop him back into the top 50 if you were seeing that, or would you need way more to feel comfortable?
The two big things I'm looking for with him are strikeouts, walks, and speed. Like I know he's going to hit for power. But it's just, what does the approach look like? And is he going to help at all in stolen bases? And
let's say he steals 5 bases in April and he has a 25% K rate.
What's his walk rate?
Let's say, what is it right now? What's his current walk? I don't know what it is off the top of my head. I'm going to just say it's 10%. I don't know what his, I'm pulling up to see what he was last year. So,
yeah, he was at 31% strikeout rate, 10% walk rate last year. So if he was,
let's say it's 12% walk rate, increases a little bit, and he cuts it down to 25, and he steals 5 bases in April.
Then I'd probably be pretty close to top 50.
Okay, so I'm just reaffirming kind of like those are the things, especially if people want to understand like our brains sometime, which our brains are insane. My brain is wacky, but like, simple check marks like that, you're like, oh, okay. But that's how fluid it can be. I mean, I didn't blow anybody's minds out there. 5 stolen bases and 25% K rate. You might not think that's a big deal. but look at what big rank movement that can happen. That's how close a lot of these guys can be in our minds, and it gets tiered, and we just have to prioritize at that point. And you're a little bit cooler on him.
The worst question that I get a lot, and I'm sure you get it maybe as much, if not more than I do, is just, give me 3 prospects outside of the top X that could be inside the top X like in a year.
Yeah.
And like I'm ranking these guys based on how much I like them and how confident I am in them. So the lower you go, I'm not going to give you 3 guys outside my top 250 that I think could be inside the top 100. Because if I actually thought that they could make that type of a jump, they wouldn't be outside the top 250. So you should be looking at players who have very minimal experience, because then what they do over the span of 6 weeks is going to count for that much more, because it represents that much larger of their career track record, right? Whereas a guy who, like if I've got a guy at rank 290 who's got 3 years under his belt in the minors, a good 4 months isn't going to do a ton for him, most likely, unless it's just out of this world. So,
and like on the Dominguez front, like I'm exponentially higher than you still on him. But if I got the inverse and I got an April of 30% K rates again, and he's walking a little bit less and he's hitting 240, carrying that over to this year again, I know it's heavy competition and stuff, but doing it again, that can't be a top 50 prospect, especially with those K rates. Like that shows no advancement from what he learned last year through spring training. Does that mean he's nothing? No, not at all. But for me, who I'm not as aggressive in dropping him as you, that would be a telltale sign of like, oh, I've got to drop him further. Where I'm speaking for you. I don't even know if you would drop him that much more. You're just like, oh, he's still doing what we're doing. Like, maybe you would tank him if you saw that again. But like, I feel like your rank is already built. You are building in the lack of positivity, and you're building in the lack of positive production, where I am building in like a case that he's not going to continue being who he was last year. And I feel like we are pre-building in 2 different sides, and whichever direction they go in that first month or 6 weeks could determine a pretty drastic move on both sides. Unless we've already built in, if it's like I said, 30% or 29%, little stolen bases, you might not move anything, where I might be like, dang, we're still here. We're not doing really, really good. All right, now we're going to go into like, outside the top 75 or something.
All right. Who is the guy that maybe you saw that you're not like super down on, but someone who you just were kind of surprised by something in a little bit of a negative way?
Yeah. So I had a couple guys that made this list. There's one guy that just stood out though, and I'll just name him. And I hate to do it like I don't want it to be like I'm not in on him, because I did like him maybe a little bit more than everybody else. But James Wood with the Padres is a little concerning on how bad he looked in spring. And it's not so much, you're not like, oh, where's the power and blah, 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 but really bad swings, like really bad takes. I caught the game where I caught Victor Acosta, and Victor Acosta looked really good. James Wood was in a game and it had like Chris Cease in it, and Jackson Merrill, Max Ferguson were all there. And he looked so fooled. And I couldn't recall who the pitcher was. It obviously wasn't a pitcher that like stood out to me. And it was this performance of like, James Wood had 3 straight absolute hacks out of his shoes, swinging at God knows what. It's like me playing MLB The Show for the first time in 10 years, where I'm just hitting the square button and I can't differentiate a changeup to a fastball. And that's what he looked like. And that's worrisome, because he's a big, long-limbed guy who's got crazy raw power. He also was stealing bases in rookie ball, which was really impressive. The pitching was so bad though out here that you got to take it with a grain of salt. And he's being valued in the same range of guys like Jay Allen, Lonnie White. I'm trying to think of not James Triantos. He's moved. Triantos and like Sweeney had kind of moved past him, but he was in that kind of general range. I'm pulling up my first year player to give you a couple other guys. Josh Baez is a perfect one. Those guys were kind of compared in the same. And I'm really worried about the swing and miss and the pitch recognition on James Wood. And that one has stood out to me as a negative. And, I had him outside the top 100, but not insanely. and I moved him below Josh Baez, which was a very specific one. And it's something to monitor. Didn't decimate him by any value. I don't tend to do that. I tend to be a little bit more cautious on these guys, and it's spring training and stuff like that. But I saw a couple games of James Wood out here, and none of them looked great. And a lot of them looked heavy swing and miss. So I've got a little bit of concern on him. And, he was a pretty valuable first year player guy, and most view as a top 150. He was in the 150 of my prospect ADP. But that was probably like, even if you didn't want a big breakdown and you just randomly were like, one guy negative, and that would have been the first one that came to my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think people will definitely appreciate that unless they are people that took James Wood in a first year player draft. But
I got a share of him. It doesn't make me feel good. I got a share from very early on in the year as well.
Yeah, I've got him at exactly I've got him at 151 right now. And I was never that high on him, but I think we definitely got to be careful. And I mean, you're definitely not saying just drop him, get out, but might not be a guy that you should expect to just get off to an awesome start at low A.
Yeah, I think I'm worried about him having a really rough start to the year. I mean, he was the biggest athlete out here in Complex with bad pitching, hot travel ball, and he just, he was great when he was out here. Really high contact and stole bases. He'll be a guy heavily monitoring to start the minor league season to see how he is against some better competition, especially traveling around more and stuff like that. I'm a little worried it's going to be a rough early go, but like I said, you don't tank these guys. It's very small sample sizes. Like you shouldn't make Jack Leiter, the number one pitching prospect because, he was touching 98 and has an immense curveball. You shouldn't say James Wood is absolutely nothing because he swung and missed in some spring training. It's an adjustment period. All this stuff is get a bigger sample size, but he looked of the guys that stood out, he looked the worst.
All right, we're going to head to another message from sponsors. After that, Chris and I will talk about some guys who made the big league roster, including our number one overall prospect. Bet against others with no fees involved. That's right, no pesky hidden fees to ruin your day. Better Edge is a social betting marketplace where there's no fee on each transaction. Better Edge is a social betting marketplace, and chances are it's legal in your state. We bring betting back to its social roots where you can like, comment, and challenge other users all within the app. Play without getting played at Better Edge. Go to betteredge.com. That's BETTOREDGE.com to sign up today. All right. I teased it before that ad read, and I was checking today. I've had Julio Rodriguez as a top 3 prospect since I saw him in the AFL in November 2019. I know that he's been both of our number one overall prospects ever since Wander Franco graduated. And I mean, I just, it's so cool that to see big league teams doing the right thing. It's kind of
weird. Isn't it weird too? It's kind of blown fresh air. It kind of blew me away too. Like, I don't think, because I would like kind of get on people about drafting him in redraft this year. Because I remember you and I had a conversation before COVID about being like, he might really come up really soon. And I felt like they were babying him, but I didn't believe that teams were going to be more aggressive with young guys. And this is something I've thought they should do forever. The best thing for the game, you talk about growing the game, what's the thing to do? What's so popular about the NBA? Everybody loves the young guys. They love the new young stars. When you have young new players come in, it's an opportunity for new people to get excited and jump in on a player in the beginning. It's kind of like a stock thing, where people are like, well, I want to jump in now on Amazon because it's $3,000 per share. But the guys that come in early, it's the same concept with the young guys. People watch baseball. My kid does the same thing. They get to see a young guy come in. They just started. It's like, oh, I can invest in this guy for the rest of their career, and this will be my baseball thing. It's great. But I never believed that they were really going to like move guys up. If there was no extra, and maybe I'm wrong here, if there was no extra advantage, I see no reason why the Mariners would have let Julio break camp. If they knew they didn't have an opportunity to get an extra pick and stuff like that, and manipulation wasn't on the table and it was like it was before, I just think it would have been status quo. Everyone would be doing what the Pirates are doing. So I just don't, I never believed that we would have this scope. And look at us now. We have I mean, my 5 top prospects, well, theoretically would have had an opportunity to break had Riley Green not fractured his ankle.
And there's more to be gained on the team side than just the extra picks. Like they're gonna pack that house with Julio Rodriguez up at the big leagues. They're gonna have a better relationship with Julio for when it comes time to talk about a contract extension.
Totally.
So there's so many bonuses on the team side to me to bringing guys like this up as soon as they're ready. So I'm just really pumped that they went that way.
It's a good validation too. Do you remember last year you and I living through the world of Kelnick versus Julio debates? That's what last year existed. I just remember it so vividly. Well, there was the Wander versus Kelnick, which was like the biggest one. But then, for however long it's been Kelnick versus Julio. Not to say that that's not going to like go the other direction, but you and I facing the adversity of staying on Julio over Kelnick was not easy in the early days. But this is one of those, we stuck to our guns and it feels pretty good, especially seeing him break camp. He looks as big as ever. Do you love that picture I got with him, me and him?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's
well, I mean, he could be, like there's so many great players in baseball, but he's charismatic enough to be the face of the sport.
I totally agree. 2 years, you're going to see him like on the cover of MLB The Show. He is going to, he was doing his own show, by the way. He was doing like a Twitter J-Rod show. That's his nickname, the J-Rod show. He was doing a Twitter show in the minors, in spring training, all that, interviewing players. That guy is the biggest personality. I love Fernando Tatis Jr. He's a personality on the field. Juan Soto, charismatic at the plate with all his stretches. He's on the field. Julio Rodriguez is the only of all the Ronald Acuna. You don't see Ronald Acuna doing stuff. It's on the field. Julio Rodriguez is the only guy of all these guys, all of the guys, Bryce Harper, Mike Trout, is the only guy that is a superstar on and off the field. And he really could change the face of a lot of stuff.
The only thing lame about this was that video that the team posted of
the fake video where he didn't know what was going
telling
on.
him like that. Like Scott Service, first of all, like the biggest square in the world, based on that video, whatever. But like the way that you tell a guy that is in front of his teammates in the clubhouse, right? Like that's how you tell a guy that. You don't sit down and make this stupid lame build up about.
Well, you know what it was? Well, like Mariners development, they do a really good, they're the best social of any team. They do lots and lots of stuff, but it was so like, we got to be like Hard Knocks, everybody. Because the Royals did the same thing. The Royals did a little dumb video that was even faker, by the way. With
Glad I haven't seen that.
Whit Merrifield was in there filming it, but they're all trying to be Hard Knocks instead of doing it the right way, where you do like a team meeting and you announce it and you let the players just jump all over the guy for making it. Everyone wants to be Hard Knocks, which is I agree. It's kind of lame. It's kind of lame.
Yeah, not a great look, but still glad that they're breaking camp with him. CJ Abrams, so the way that I would describe the way I am kind of advising people on Abrams right now is I don't have him anywhere for redraft, but someone should have him in your league. And if you want it to be you, then great. But it would be an amazing feat for him to hit better than like 235 this year against big league pitching. Like I really think that like if CJ Abrams goes out and hits 250, then his future is incredibly bright, because he just has no business having that much success given the amount of experience he has against upper level pitching. But I wouldn't rule it out. I mean, he's incredibly talented. Where are you at on Abrams just for 2022?
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I'm torn. The NL is such a weird spot. I'm shocked that they're giving him a spot, and he's finally having to relent. He did it last spring as well, playing some outfield, and he was successful in spring training. But he just had kind of a lost year of injuries and stuff. He got to start in right field. He said he'll play anywhere. He can play anywhere. The Padres like to have, these super utility type of guys. My only worry with him is that I don't know if it's good that he specifically is not an everyday player. He doesn't have a ton of high-end experience. He missed so much time last year. He's an insanely explosive athlete. But I really hope that them having him up is them trying to get him every day at bats. Not like he's starting on Tuesday at second, he starts on Friday at right, he's a pinch runner on Thursday. Like, I just don't know if that's great for him. It's bad for his fantasy value. But I would speculate. You have to speculate early on. It's one of those things we don't know. If he didn't get drafted, I think there's some 10-man leagues out there. He didn't, maybe even some 12s. You should pick him up. I would be interested even if he's slow early and someone drops off, but I just don't know what the future holds outside of April. I unfortunately could see a scenario where he's sent down to AAA, where it's not working out. He's struggling at the plate a tiny bit. And they're just saying, the best thing for this kid is to get at bats because of what's been missed. So I'm a little bit tepid on him, but he is an insane talent. He's the fastest player on that team, no doubt in my mind. He can play multiple positions. He has real power and he makes fantastic contact. He is going to be a fantasy stud. I'm just not sure about this year. I was very surprised that they held him up.
Yeah, I mean, I would be hoping for the same type of production. Like, well, I don't know. Like, most of the guys that I think are going to produce like him are guys that I wasn't really touching in drafts. Like, I'm not that in on like Akil Baddoo.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be kind of similar, but I mean, like Jonathan VR, like that type of thing. Even though I was kind of in on VR after he signed with the Cubs, but
I was too. I was a little,
but like that's sort of like the best case scenario to me, like as a rookie. And I don't even think he'll be like Andrew Vaughn is kind of a post hype sleeper this year. Even though I'm still worried about his playing time, just because
too. I really am now with the AJ Pollock trade and everything.
Yeah, but I don't even think CJ Abrams will be a quote unquote sleeper next year just because of the speed. Like anytime a guy could steal 30 bases.
Look at Miles Straw. Miles Straw can't do anything else. I mean, he can hit a little bit, but he doesn't hit homers. He's not going to be an RBI threat. And he was like going like 125 overall.
Look at like Victor Robles and Andres Jimenez, like back, a couple of years ago, those guys were going.
Victor Robles is a really interesting comp I'm worried about. Like, who, and you may either falsely or positively transitioning us here. I'm much more interested in Bryson Stott than I am CJ Abrams. That's another one I'm shocked that he got the spot, but I'm not shocked. And I've been very vocal about Bryson Stott since the AFL. He is a crazy bat. He's an insane bat, great patience, walks more than he strikes out in the AFL. He also did it in the spring. He doesn't show off crazy power, but he has it. He had a power explosion at the end of the AFL. Insane bat speed. He's a pretty good defender. He's just like a 5-tool player. He can steal. He does everything. So I just didn't know if they would push him that aggressive, and they did. And they gave him a spot. Him and Baume vying for third. While also they have Didi that I think Bryson can take that spot. I kind of think Bryson might have an opportunity to double up on plate appearances, and he's kind of a dark horse for NL Rookie of the Year for me. I would be more aggressive on him than Abrams, even though Abrams has a higher stolen base front. But don't sleep on Stott. If he's given the opportunity, I think Stott could steal 15 bases this season, where obviously if Abrams were given the opportunity and succeeded, he could steal 50, to be honest with you. But I like Stott, and I would be a little bit more aggressive on him than Abrams. And I think Stott is probably more available in leagues as far as picking up goes than Abrams would be. But I mean, I could be off.
How about Stott versus Jeremy Pena for 2022?
Ooh, that's so tough. I mean, if you told me both guys get the same run, I'm going to take Stott hands down. And I know that's not going to be super popular because Pena is buzzy as buzz can be. They're very similar in they've got, power speed combos, and Pena's really grown in size. The Astros love him. From a draft standpoint, if I'm talking redraft, I would take Pena because I get more guarantees, and I think they're very close. And I think the Astros are way more committed to Jeremy Pena unless he super fails.
How about, I think the Phillies are kind of saying all the right things about Alec Baume. I mentioned this on the radio show today. My theory is that he would already be optioned to AAA if he wasn't going to throw a big tantrum about it. And like, I could just picture him being such a prickly guy that they don't want to go that route necessarily.
And he is a little prickly, that.
Like Bryson Stott is better than Alec Baume at everything. And
Agreed.
I don't see him being in a platoon, no matter what Joe Girardi says. Like Bryson Stott's going to play.
I think it's opportunity. Like they don't want to get, because to your point, if you send him down like now, you're really kind of giving up. And I don't think they want to kill the confidence yet. But to your point, though, I think Bryson at the end of April, Bryson Stott is playing more consistently than Alec Baume. They've got the DH to run with. They could put Schwarber out in the outfield to play a little bit. Like they've got some flexibility where they could try to get Baume and Stott in at the same time. But I think Stott is the play over Baume at this point.
And this is the Phillies are probably top 3 or 4 in the majors in desperation. They're not gonna win 82 games instead of 86 games because they gave Alec Baume 350 plate appearances he didn't deserve. So like they're gonna find a spot for Stott. I think like Stott is gonna have to struggle to not play.
Yeah, and I think it's like Stott can play third base one day, and then he can take over for Didi, one day at short. Like that's what I'm saying. Like I think he plays more consistently. Where Baume, I just don't see it. I think Baume is third base, maybe DH. I think he's sitting more, and if he struggles, I don't know, dude. He might be. I don't know if they do it, but he might be a guy that you just move on from. Like don't be at the expense of other players at this point. Though they don't have a lot of depth. Like after Stott and Baume, like who's the next guy? I don't think they want to groom Stott as the next third baseman. I think he's the shortstop when they're out of the Didi contract. But, I'm just not super excited about Baume, though I did feel he could be one of those guys that could be in the next class of like improving this season. I don't think in spring he's shown enough. And I don't think the team has shown enough confidence. Clearly having Stott up, I think kills some of that confidence.
So we touched on Stott, touched on Pena briefly. I do want to talk about more big league guys, but I did just want to get your take. So like I think you are kind of in the if you had to pick a guy to be the number graduate, I think you're on Anthony Volpe.
Yeah, good call. Yep.
I'm on Corbin Carroll for that, and I wanted to ask you about him because I want to talk about like aggressive assignments. Sending him to Double-A, I'm not surprised. Like, I think he can handle Double-A, but I mean, they are not holding back on him. Remember, like a year ago, the Mariners sent Julio Rodriguez to High A. The Diamondbacks have all the cover in the world to send Corbin Carroll to High A, and they're sending him to Double-A. What did you make of that move?
Yeah, I thought that was a good aggressive move. I thought it was the right move. Before Carroll got hurt, he was at High A and he was killing it. He was dominating. He was right back at it. And I'm not surprised by it. He had a great spring. I mean, I was tweeting about it. Like I said, someone was like, "How are you not talking about Carroll?" It's because I love the guy. I love Corbin Carroll. He has, I've always said that Abrams speed. It's the same thing. You could call it Carroll speed. In a flash, I had a couple listeners that were at this backfield game that I was at, and Slade Ciccone was pitching. It was an inter squad game, and pitched to Carroll, and Carroll absolutely just ripped a changeup off of him to the right field wall. And I swear to God, it felt like this. Before the ball hit the grass off of the field, he was at second base. That's what it felt like. I mean, it was like blink of an eye, he's at second. He makes really, really great contact. He's such a smart player. He's very, very smart about his approach. And he hasn't gotten the body up like Alec has. And I would love for those two to like work out in the offseason a little bit more. So he hasn't gotten the body there, but his general nature of contact, he just makes, he's going to hit for power at some degree. He'd be an incredible leadoff hitter. He can steal bases. He's super fast. And the assignment shows a lot that, the Diamondbacks re-signed Ketel Marte. They're in a weird spot. I think next year, if the Diamondbacks don't have an opening day roster of Carroll and Alec Thomas, I think they're being silly with themselves. Just put those guys. What are you waiting for? Put those guys out there. Get Ketel in at second. And you're grooming Jordan Lawler to come up, relatively soon. They gave him a assignment, which I thought was actually nice and aggressive because I assumed maybe they would have him play rookie ball again due to the injury. But I thought it was speaking to everything. Could Carroll make it up this year? Absolutely, dude. If he kills Double-A, there's no reason to keep him there. Alec is up first, though. Alec is 100% up first, but I would not be surprised if August is here and Carroll and Thomas are both up in the majors. That's the type of hitter. I know they believe Carroll can do it. They just need him to hit for more power and they need reps. He is the most polished hitter on that team, hands down. So, when you say Volpe, the only difference here, I actually think Volpe and him are incredibly similar in many, many ways. Just Volpe has a better approach for power right now and plays a more premium position. So yeah, my number one guy would be Volpe, but I see a path where Corbin Carroll could jump over even Noelvi Marte, who looks like he's going to be a third baseman and moving off. I could see Carroll as my number two, and I could see, a year or so of Carroll and Volpe being 1-2. I would not discount that happening. But yeah, I think we have the similar type of player. I think maybe the conversation piece is, why do you and I both not have Noelvi as the number one overall guy? I think a lot of people would ask, because he continues to check boxes. He got bigger. He is changing positions. But is there something about Noelvi that sets you back?
Well, just quickly on Carroll, like I think in a year, maybe even in like 3 months, there's going to be a lot of people like, I think he's going to hit for power, and I don't think he needs to add muscle to hit for power. And I think he's going to hit for power this year. I think there's a lot of similarities with Carroll's body and like bat speed and forearm strength and wrist strength to like Mookie Betts when he was coming up. Where
that's a great comp. I'm really glad you said that. That is a very, very good analogy for people to process on their head, because you're 100% right about that.
Like when you're that good with the bat, like you're just, and you're like, it's not like he's a slap hitter like Nick Madrigal or something. Like he's driving the ball. Like he's going to hit for power. So
he barrels that ball, and it's not driving it into the ground. You're 100% right.
But yeah, on Noelvi, it's just, he's everyone in my top 15 is going to be up by next year. And Noelvi's not in my top 15 because I don't think he's up till 2024. But, even if he is up in 2023, everyone is so good that I have ahead of him. They've proven more. Like my level of confidence is high, and it kind of comes back. Like, I think there's just this, like I've ranted about this before on the pod, but this idea of upside and ceiling, and some guys having it and some guys not having it. Like, if you are like, a lot of these guys just have way more upside than people give them credit for. Yeah. Like, to me, like Nick York has a ton of upside. Like Nick York could be Robinson Cano. Like that's an incredibly high ceiling. Like Tristan Casas has a ton of upside. He could be like a top 3 fantasy first baseman. Noelvi Marte's got a ton of upside, but I think he's got more risk than those guys of failing to reach that upside. And I don't want to put the cart before the horse with him, because I think there are, I've made some mistakes with doing that on players in the past. And I think that there's just so many good prospects right now. There's no reason to push him to the moon ahead of guys who are also just really, really good and a lot closer to the majors.
It's really interesting how you said that, though. But like, okay, with the York, let's take York for instance. That didn't really exist pre-draft outside of maybe the Red Sox organization. What makes the upside? Because you got to see, so follow me here. You got to see York, and we got to see his success that I think created that beast of upside, where you say he could be Robbie Cano. But we got to see Noelvi Marte and his production, and that gets to create what a lot of people will throw out comps of, like Miguel Cabrera. What's the difference in your eyes of why York has the upside without the risk, where I would say you have similar Noelvi comps to like Miggy and stuff, like young Miggy, where what's the risk that makes him not in that same camp? Is it just proximity of age, that there's more years under him? I mean, York is 20 and Noelvi is older. I mean, Noelvi is older than Nick York. So what, like,
well, I think like riskier? It's kind of, and I'm just gonna like reference the stats here on York, because they are just so absolutely laughable. But like, so you're never gonna see a 19-year-old put up the numbers he did at low A and high A with the type of plate discipline that he had and the type of power output that he had. And like, you're not gonna be able to find guys that did that who didn't make it. Like, it's borderline, it's like once every 10 years type of stuff for a guy that age to go to full season ball and do that much damage without striking out a ton and while getting to power. And it's just like I am incredibly confident in Nick York being an awesome hitter in the big leagues, based on what he's done so far. And Noelvi Marte, like I don't buy those Miggy comps. Like I haven't heard that actually. I haven't seen people say that, but like that's just I don't think we're talking about that caliber of prospect, at least not yet.
The interesting thing of what you're saying here too is that both of those guys had low and high A production last year at almost the same age. Like Noelvi's like 5 months or 4 months older than Nick York, and where Nick York in low A hit 323 with 10 homers and 11 stolen bases in 76 games, then hit 333 in high A with 4 more homers and 2 stolen bases. Noelvi in what looks like about the same amount of games, it's a little bit adjusted. Noelvi hit 271 in low A, but he had 17 homers and 23 stolen bases. And then in high A, he hit 290 with no homers and 1 stolen base. And he also struck out, I would say, exponentially more than Nick York. So to your point, Nick York showed off, power, speed, elite batting average, and an elite eye at the plate, where Noelvi, I think, showed off more elite intangibles, counting stats. Like this is a guy, could he be 30-30? Could he be 40-20 type of stuff? But he showed off more warning-ish signs as far as strikeouts go, not showing off like an elite average. And again, I'm not like coming at you about that. I have been critical of Noelvi. I literally opened up like a whole series of being critical about Noelvi last year because it was like he could be number one. I just find it, I always find it interesting because I think I struggle sometimes in where do we cross, what line do we cross where it's like, well, this guy has this upside with no downside, and this guy has limited upside with high downside. Like where do those go? Because I feel like with the young guys, sometimes, unfortunately, some people, it's like every guy could be this guy. Every guy could be Bo Jackson. Every guy can be Dustin Pedroia. Every single one of those. And I think it's hard, and you got to be careful about comps. Though I think these are really interesting ones, especially the Nick York one. He is elite for what he did. Having the debate of the upside versus downside and the insane comps we put on prospects is, I think, what creates some of the insanity of why people. I mean, Jesus, like Yuri Perez, everyone's like, hey, no one's talked about him since Craig Mish said Jose Ramirez or Jose Fernandez is the last guy that anybody has comped like Yuri Perez. That's an insane value. So of course people are pissed off, James, when you don't have him as like the top 5 overall starting pitcher, because they're like, this guy's Jose Fernandez. And I just think we get messy when we get into the insane comp game.
Yeah, I threw out the Robinson Cano one because I'm just so sick of people saying that York doesn't have a high ceiling and that he's more like floor than ceiling. Like if you can hit 320, you have a high ceiling by definition when it's going to come with power. And so
14 homers with a 325 batting average across 2 levels at 19 years old. That does speak a lot. That speaks big.
So that was a fun tangent.
That was a total tangent. I'm tangenting.
We're gonna get back to just a few more guys who crack their big league rosters, but first, just one more message from our sponsors. Baseball is back. That's right, an entire glorious season, all 162 games, and with live events resuming, you can actually be there to catch all the action in person with Vivid Seats. Every backdoor slider, every round tripper, and every doubleheader can be experienced live. And with Vivid Seats rewards, you can start earning free tickets from your very first purchase. Just buy, collect stamps, and redeem. It's that easy. From behind the dugout to upper level, Vivid Seats has you covered for all the games that matter to you. Pro tip, buy tickets for your whole group, split the bill, and make progress towards your free tickets even faster. Just visit vividseats.com or download the app today. Vivid Seats, life happens live. All right, so I wanted to ask about I'm going to throw out like 3 or 4 names at you.
Cool.
And just since these are guys that were in Arizona, and like you tell me if you got eyes on them and if they look good. Miguel Vargas, MJ Melendez, Nick Lodolo, and Vinny Pasquantino. Did you get eyes on any of those guys?
Yes. Vinny, I did. God, do I love him. He is a big old he's just like a big bear with a big old 30 homer plus. I don't think I realized how big he was until I saw him in person. He is quite a big individual, which does lead to a little bit of worry. You're like, boy, don't let him go in the wrong direction. But he has dumb power. It's a different sound that comes off his bat. Um, he's looked pretty good. He was a little bit wonky in that game where Leiter was there. Leiter ate him up a little bit. He was hitting some stuff into the ground. He also had a really bad play at first base. And he had a couple like weird scoops that I do wonder if he's going to more and more be viewed only as a DH, which is going to be difficult for the Royals because you've also got guys like MJ Melendez that might have to kind of work there. I've seen MJ Melendez a million times. I did not get to see him live in person in spring. Royals practices were kind of nutty, and I never happened to catch him in a game. I kind of caught the Royals games later when he had already been sent down. So I didn't see MJ Melendez in person, but I've seen him a million times. Vinny looked good. I saw Miguel Vargas is actually in the scrimmage game. I was at the scrimmage game that had Walker Buehler versus Craig Kimbrell, White Sox Dodgers. It was the game, I think, that pushed Craig Kimbrell to be traded because the Dodgers were watching him. And it was also the game that Yoenis Cespedes was trying out for the White Sox. And his brother, Yoelqui, was out there as well. It was a weird game. And Miguel Vargas was in that game with Walker Buehler. And he continues to just look, as patient as can be at the plate. He's got great power. One of probably more underrated prospects in all of baseball. And then what was the other one? There's a fourth one. Vinny,
Nick Lodolo.
Miguel. I did not get to see any of the starts of Nick Lodolo, but I can tell you a couple things. A cheap plug for our boy Jeff Ponce, who had him on in an interview and spoke very highly of him. We talked about him, but I've been openly saying this. I don't know if this is a hot take. I feel like it is from like a redraft perspective. I'm Nick Lodolo over Hunter Green.
Me too.
I'm pretty firmly on that. But I don't think, you tell me if I'm wrong. I don't think that's consensus. I think everybody else wants Hunter Green over Lodolo.
No, Hunter Green it's kind of same thing with Jack Leiter. He's got the famous tax, and Nick Lodolo is not as famous. So the people who follow prospects just for redraft have known who Hunter Green was for years, and they are just now finding out about Nick Lodolo. So like I have Lodolo like 20 spots higher on my rankings than Hunter Green, and I have a ton of exposure to Lodolo, and I've got a few Green in redraft, but not a ton. So
redraft, I didn't mean to interrupt. We just did a show in this league called our share shows, bold prediction and shares. Nick Lodolo, I think, was like an over 50% share in my leagues. He was one of my, not the highest. I had like 3 guys that I had the most shares of. It was like 6 or 7 leagues, and then Lodolo was in the top tier of players in redraft I'm most exposed to this year. And I don't think I have a single Hunter Green.
Yeah, I've got over 50% Lodolo in the NFBC. I don't have quite as much Lodolo as I do Reed Detmers, who's my most rostered player in NFBC. But Lodolo, like, to me, he's kind of right there now that he's in the rotation. It's a bad team context, like bad park, bad defense. But I mean, you'll take a pitcher with that kind of ceiling where you can get it.
I think he'll be a really good cheap guy like Lodolo next year, because probably going to have like a 4 ERA because of everything you just mentioned, but he has the intangibles. And the thing that people got to watch for, Hunter Green is sexy and big fastball, but from day one, I had a guy tell me when he was out here in Low A, because I followed Hunter Green from the minute he got drafted. I've been around him. I was at the practice where he blew out his arm. He was working on a side field and he came off kind of upset and he walked off, and then 2 days later he was out. And I've been around him forever, but I've had people tell me, as explosive as he is with the fastball, the problem is there's just not a lot of movement on it. And the Reds have been really good about that. And you still see it. When you can pump 100, 101, but this isn't Emmanuel Clase, throwing a 102 mile an hour cutter that moves, from one side of your body to the other. It's a pretty straight fastball. He will have success. He can blow it by. But is he going to be able to successfully pitch his secondaries to set that fastball up? Because guess what's going to happen? If it like this happened with Casey Mize, they're not the same. But like when Casey Mize couldn't use his splitter to set up the rest of his pitches, hitters just sat, didn't swing at the splitter, and they just waited for him to throw the fastball. And that's what'll happen. If Hunter Green is not successful with his secondaries, people will just wait to hit this flat fastball that comes in 100, and they'll just change their timing. So I'm not saying that's going to happen. He's a super smart guy, credible athlete. I think he could be an elite closer, but he still seems to have like the lack of movement thing that worries. And I just think he's going to get hit up a little bit more, where Lodolo, I think, has got better stuff kind of in general. I think maybe a better sense of command. And I think he's going to do better this year. And, obviously you and I are just more invested in him.
Yeah. I think you nailed that. So I just got 2 more questions for you. The first one is, I'm going to give you 3 prospects who, maybe they're all just inside my top 100, but they might not be in your top 100. So they're
Okay.
like not as flashy. But they all are made the big league roster out of spring training, and I want you to pick one for 2022. Geraldo Perdomo with your Diamondbacks.
Okay.
Kyle Isbell with the Royals.
Can I guess the last one?
Yeah.
Juan.
Nope.
Okay.
That's it. Well, we can
now
throw
you're gonna make it really tough.
Let's throw him into the mix too.
Okay.
Stephen Kwan and Diego Castillo with the Pirates.
Oh, okay. Let me answer it first without Kwan, because I'm going to tell you Kwan is the answer of all of them.
Okay.
Without Kwan, it's Perdomo. Kyle Isbell's interesting, but I don't think he has the ability to take over. You've got Edward Olivares. They got Michael Taylor. Olivares, I think, is pretty I don't see a spot where Isbell takes it over. I did see him in BP a couple times, and I think I missed him in one of the games. I still like Olivares. Castillo, I'm not, even though the playing time is interesting, I don't have exposure for this year, but Perdomo, I do have exposure, especially in one of my NL leagues and a deeper league that I have where I missed out on shortstop, because, where I think he lacks in power, which is kind of unfortunate. I hope he gets to. One of the things that stood out, I think he was the youngest player in the AFL in 2019 when he was there. And there was one thing you could count on. When he was in the lineup, he was getting a hit. He was going to make contact. He got a little more whippy after that, being around guys like Vidal Brujan, and he's got the helicopter whip on the back, that I think, getting some time in the majors and kind of reestablishing himself in the minors when he really struggled, I think he's going to find himself again. I think he's going to be a good contact hitter, a good source of runs. He can steal a bit, and I think he's a great defender. And you've got both Rojas and Ahmed that are going to miss time. That I really think the Diamondbacks should move on from Nick Ahmed, because even though he's a Gold Glover, I don't think you miss that much from Perdomo. He's a fantastic defender. So of those guys, I'm going to bank on Perdomo, but Kwan, I have a lot more investment on, even though I am not the big Kwan guy, not going to try to pretend to be I've always been on Stephen Kwan. Nope. I don't know where the counting stats are. I'm worried he's more Luis Ariz than he is, the next Andrew Benintendi, but he's going to be in the lineup, a prominent lineup. He makes fantastic contact. He hasn't shown off insane power or speed, so he's not going to be valuable if he hits 300 with 6 homers and 7 stolen bases, but I'm banking on a little bit more, and he's locked into a lineup, I think, for the rest of the year. So in 2022, Kwan is the answer. Perdomo, without him, it's Perdomo for me.
See, I'm more confident in Isbell's playing time than Kwan's playing time.
You are? Really?
I didn't know you were one of these Edward Olivares truthers, but
I'm not necessarily a truther. It's in more that, like, I don't think they're convinced any of their guys work. I would throw out as well, don't discount Nick Pratto getting some run in the outfield. They've got Dozier to play in the outfield. Also, don't throw out MJ Melendez, who could be a possibility for playing time. That's more of my thing. Isbell is he's a better source of power and speed if you were given the full time. I just don't think he's going to get the full time. So yeah, I guess we disagree on that.
And then with Perdomo, quick bonus question. Can you guess his career low walk rate?
Oh God. Probably 4%.
12.3%.
What? Really?
That's the lowest walk rate he's ever had.
Wow. That surprises me.
And I know that, there's a lot that goes into walk rate in the minors. Like, a lot of guys are too passive and that type of thing, but he's been young for every level he's ever played at. And he's struggled at some of those levels. He hasn't struggled much, but he was below league average at AA last year. He really came on strong towards the end of the year. So that, like, I think you can kind of throw out his beginning of the year last year, but he could lead off for this team. And what are the I think you're totally right on Nick Ahmed. Like, what's the point of playing Nick Ahmed anymore for that team? He's kind of proven exactly who he is.
Yeah,
Perdomo is at worst as good as Nick Ahmed, probably, when you factor in offense. So I think Perdomo is going to be a popular waiver wire ad in April.
I agree. Yeah, it's funny. I've been mentioning about this. I'm not trying to turn into another guy, but like I saw when TGFBI ran, big industry league. I saw one of the top guys on Fab was Stephen Kwan. Everyone was like, "Oh, we got to get Stephen Kwan now," and that was when I had drafted Stephen Kwan. So I was like, "Sweet, don't have to worry about it." Perdomo's another one of those guys. I think, just like you said, you're going to see the same thing where, like, I've picked him up in deeper leagues. I don't know if like 12-man leagues are going to pick him up, but he'll be a little bit more popular. Especially if he kind of takes off. You never know. Without Rojas, without Ahmed, they might hit him high in the lineup, especially after the first week or so. You might get a lineup or two where they want to throw him out there. He just makes good contact. He's a sneaky dude.
Okay. Last question. You mentioned Emmanuel Clase briefly earlier. I'm back to ranking relief pitchers, and there's one relief pitcher who made his team's big league bullpen out of spring training, but he had been developed as a starter up until this spring.
I know exactly. You're going to do this.
Who is inside my top 150 now. And it's because I hated him as a starting pitching prospect because I just didn't think he was going to, like, I didn't think the delivery or anything or the command worked as a starter. But now that he's in the bullpen, I'm pretty excited. There's some injury risk here. He always seems to be banged up. But can you guess which recently converted reliever cracked my top 150 on this last update?
Could his name be Mckenzie Gore?
No.
No, I thought you were. I mean, go back and listen to yourself. That was Mckenzie Gore.
That was Mckenzie Gore. That's hilarious. I do not think that, regardless of how Gore is used this year, I do not think the Padres are pulling the plug on him as a starter. But
okay. Yeah. I mean,
this is a guy where his team, I think, has officially pulled the plug on him as a starter.
Oh, crud!
He's probably someone who's been on your top 500 for either on it or just off it for maybe 3 or 4 years. And actually, I can give you an even better hint.
Yeah, let's get it.
He originally signed with the team you follow, the Diamondbacks.
He originally signed with the team I follow.
He's 24 years old.
And they committed to a relief. Oh, this is going to kill me. I don't know.
You're going to kick yourself.
I'm going to be pissed. Oh, how pissed am I going to be? Hold on. Do I need to do one more? I feel like I'm going to be super pissed when you say this one.
I'm
trying to look. You know what I'm trying to do?
Okay,
go ahead. Yeah, no, go ahead. Keep talking. So a chance to look.
He was traded. Can I get this trade right? Let's see. I think it was Eduardo Escobar. Yeah, he was in the Eduardo Escobar trade.
Oh no, this guy isn't there either. Oh man, I'm so done. This is gonna piss me. It's not Johan Duran, is it?
Yeah, it
is Johan Duran. Okay, yeah. Well, because I thought Johan Duran was still a possibility because you were saying I must have missed that they are fully committed to relief on him.
That's me sort of maybe jumping to conclusions a little bit. I know that he's not in their rotation. So the fact that he made the big league roster, and given his injury history, I'm quite confident that he will be a reliever from here on out. But
thank God you let me do that, by the way. I would have been so mad had you not let me get there about Johan Duran. He's got big fat. I know Eno has been touting him on his plus stuff. And Johan Duran has always had a big fastball. It makes sense. The more that you say about it, like, he makes more sense in the bullpen and could be a legit closing option in the future. That, I mean, with especially, you see a lot of the plus stuff out there, but like with how he commands the ball with that big fastball, he's one of those guys. He's definitely one of those guys. It's crazy to see everybody else in on him, and also makes me upset from the Diamondbacks. But Oh man, so he's 150 to you?
As strictly a reliever. If I find out tomorrow that they are going to send him a AAA and stretch him back out, he's outside my top 200. But I think he has like top 5 closer type of upside if that role were to come about. And
like an Edwin Diaz type, it seems like you're
I mean, look,
putting him
like
on.
that bullpen, like I think it's Taylor Rogers' job, but you know, that's not a extremely settled bullpen, and they've shown in the past that Taylor Rogers, they don't mind kind of jerking him around a little bit. So
That's a good one.
I'm interested. I'm very interested. And then kind of bonus Twins guy. I'm all in on Josh Winder at this point. I think he's the type of pitching prospect who's in my top 100 who I think you could still trade for and buy before people really start to freak out about him. But exciting things happening with the Twins, which
Yeah,
is not.
and also, you know, just a great point too of I said this a million times over. It's very interesting the evolution of ranking prospects and how they go and why it's important to, you know, find a couple sources that you really like because, you know, you have evolved and I think you have a very smart and great perspective, especially I think attuned to proximity even more where I still kind of fall into a territory. I have it built in, but I don't have it built in to your degree, which, you know, might be not great in some areas, might be great in some type of dynasties, depending on the league that you play in, that, you know, you really are on a lot of those proximity guys and having that balance of like, you know, finding, you know, the younger guys and still having the value versus those guys. Like I don't have Winder high like you do. And there's evolution of like, ranking guys who have more relief, but can they be closers and still putting in the value? You know, that's something that we've kind of got to do as well. So it's the evolution is good. There's a
Well,
lot more people in the space, and hopefully people are finding, you know, a couple that they really want to dig into to help them make the decisions.
and as I mentioned in my article, I hit on Emmanuel Clase to some extent. I had him top 150 for a while, but I also had like Brian Abreu and Sam Delaplane and James Karinchak and Joe Jimenez and Andres Munoz ranked in the top like 300 at certain
Ooh,
points.
Andres
So
Munoz is coming back though. He'll be back.
yeah, that's a TBD. I think the other ones are misses, but the Munoz one is TBD. I just wish he wasn't the 5th closer in that bullpen, but
Yeah, I mean, I like Karinchak as well. There's some other guys. I rank them. I have Duran in my ranks. He was right outside the top 300. I saw him as a starting pitcher, but I rank some relief pitchers. I think Kevin Kopps is going to be a future closer with the Padres. You know, I'd be interested of, you know, we're going to go down this road, but like Camilo Duvall, you can't, you know, he's still, I think, prospect eligible, and you have to consider
he's
him.
thankfully not prospect eligible for mine because I factor in the days on the active roster. So
But yeah, he's still, I think, via MLB.
yeah, I don't
Right?
have to rank
Yeah.
Duvall and I don't have to rank Lars Nootbaar. Thank God.
Lars, you know what? Maybe I need to take the Duvall off. Good. I've been dying. I die for closers to come off of my prospect. So it's the one thing, James and I's favorite thing on the planet is not so much. I'll tell you this right now. Everyone know this. It's not even being right on a prospect. Like we opened the show, Julio Rodriguez being number one for us forever. Not that he's doing a big deal, but you know, where others had other guys or Bobby Witt or even some others, you know, Adley. Our favorite thing on the planet is taking off a pesky prospect off your list. There's no better feeling than deleting a guy that you're sick of trying to figure out how to evaluate, whether it's major league time or positional stuff. It's the best feeling on the planet is taking off guys that you feel it's almost like a monkey's off your back. You're just like, oh my God, this is great. Everything is possible now in the world because Francisco Mejia is no longer on our list from multiple years ago.
Shout out Joey Bart, Luis Campusano, AJ Puck, and Dalton Jeffries.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks a lot, Welsh. This was a ton of fun. Why don't you let people know where they can support you and find your work?
Yeah, dude, I appreciate it. InThisLeague.com is the Patreon for, I do a lot of dumb stuff now. In This League Fantasy Baseball podcast. I also have Prospect One, which you guys probably care about. Those are my own two podcasts. InThisLeague.com is the Patreon where I've got my top 500 prospect list, which is updated monthly. It will be bi-monthly or bi-weekly. Now that the season's starting, I've got a Dynasty top 400. I've got a prospect top 200 ADP on there. I got a whole bunch of other stuff. We've also got Group Me rooms, which is similar to Discord. If people want to come and hang out, we've got a prospect room. I do a whole bunch of other stuff. And I'm also now on Fantasy Pros, 3 times a week with Joe Pisapia on the Daily Show, where, you know, I'll be able to hopefully talk about prospects and talk about other stuff. So you can check that out on the podcast and the YouTube. And just anytime I get to do podcasts with you, I'm always happy. So thanks, man. I appreciate it.
This was a ton of fun, and I will probably be bugging you again now that I'm riding solo here. I'm sure I'll have you on a few more times.
Yeah, baby. Yeah. Oh, I know. I miss Clay. Should we talk about a hip hop album real quick? Should we? I was a Tupac guy.
Yeah.
Me Against the World. Me Against the World. Greatest Tupac. Everyone says All Eyes on Me, but yeah, you're wrong. Me Against the World. Greatest Tupac album. I think that was before it went Death Row.
That's a good call.
Brenda's Got a Baby. That might be one of the all-time songs too.
I've always been a All Eyes on Me guy, but
love it.
I think Tupac's early work doesn't get enough play.
Yeah, it was Digital Underground before, and like Me Against the World, if I remember correctly, was his first album, and it had more of like I like that type of like soulful, like Mos Def, Talib Kweli, like Black Star, like those were that's what I grew up with, and it kind of had some more of that feeling. And Me Against the World, like I haven't listened to it in a long time, but I could put it on and I would remember every little bit of it. All Eyes on Me is amazing, and it has the classics, but I felt like All Eyes on Me was for everybody, and Me Against the World was for me. Like it's that type of album, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, All Eyes on Me is a party album, and Me Against the World is a chillin' album for sure.
And I'm more of a chillin' type of a guy, especially if I'm reading off some of those guys. So all right, so we got some of it in. Hopefully someone's happy. We did
that was paying homage to the great Clay Link.
The great Clay Link.
All right, man. Really appreciate it. I will talk to you soon. This has been the RotoWire Prospect Podcast, brought to you by WinBet.